Okay, here we are. What's up, everyone? My name is AJ Writes Crypto, and welcome to Algorand Unfiltered. My guest for today's show is the CTO of the Algorand Foundation, John Allen Woods. John, thank you so much for being here today. How are you doing?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me on. It's great to speak with you and great to amplify the work that we're doing across this ecosystem. So thank you for the opportunity. And, you know, I just want to say something here today before we even get started. AJ has been killing it with organization around this space, and Twitter's fault, or X, whatever they're calling themselves these days. They let him down. The first space wouldn't start. The two of us together, two tech bros, could not troubleshoot it, and so we are now in a new room. I don't know. I've already tweeted it out. Do we have to do anything else to kind of make people aware that it's here? Maybe you could all tweet it out for me. Is that okay? Or just
if everyone in the space right now, the first one, Elon just was not having it. He said not today, so we had to make a new room. Very frustrating because so many people were signed up for the other space, but it's okay. You guys can help right here, right now. The AlgoFam, just retweet this space that you're in, like the space, add comments, do whatever to juice the algorithm to get as many people in here as possible. And also, I mean, there's already over 100 people in here, so this is actually massive. And on top of that, this space is also being recorded on on streaming software on the back end, so you will be able to come back and watch like the video of this interview as well on my YouTube channel in the very near future. So, John, man, this is amazing, but let's get down to it. I mean, this is big news, but the technical roadmap just released yesterday. First off, I'm going to start by saying I love how well it was written and how it was framed as the Algorand Gambit with all the chess references. That was very well done and done with style, in my opinion. And to be honest, like that really summed it up for me. You know, like crypto is chess and chess is a battle. Except in this world, we don't fight for bishops and pawns. We fight for our market share. We fight for our users and our audience. And most importantly, we endlessly fight to solve the blockchain trilemma. And I stand by my statement that Algorand still has the best argument for it. So, you know, now with the technical roadmap, we're bigger, we're better, we're faster, we're stronger. We feel like a Kanye West song over here. So I'm going to start off. So John, I'm going to start off with this because I really want to gauge where you're at. My excitement level on a scale of 0 to 100 is about a 92. And those last 8 points can only be gained in the bull run. Where are you at right now?
I am at an 80, which is the highest I have felt in excitement since I got here. We still have more work to do, though, and I'm kind of acutely aware of that. So I don't want to kind of get too ahead of myself or ahead of ourselves. And so, yeah, let me say, I started with the Algorand Foundation about a year and a half ago or so. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you fine. Yep.
Perfect. Sorry, I just want to make sure. So I started with the Algorand Foundation about a year and a half ago. And it's been an incredible journey. There's been times when I felt like we as a team, as a group, as a company, as an ecosystem, didn't have a beaten path forward, and we didn't have kind of the obvious way to go. And I think we've set ourselves up together. Okay. And this is not just the Algorand Foundation's work or Algorand Technologies / Inc., as they used to be known as, their work. It's not just the work of me or my team. It's the work of the entire ecosystem, and we're all driving forward success. We cannot do it without a joint effort. And I feel probably for the first time in the year and a half that I've been here that all the blocks are, no pun intended, are falling into place. All of the problems, all of the issues, all of the friction, we have an answer. Some of the answers are not implemented yet, but we have an answer. And so I've never been more, I guess, positively forward-looking about the opportunity that we have to turn Algorand into a platform which is truly the Linux of blockchains. And just on that, sorry, just on with the 1 point on the chess, right? Because we went, like, the community have been asking for a long time. Give us cool names. And at Cardano, we had like Goguen, Basho, whatever, you know. And so when I was there, they got into the naming thing. And so we felt for a long time like it was something we needed to do. But we finally had this kind of roadmap, right? A tech roadmap that was worth the time to sit down and go, hey, let's name all these things. Let's give people something that they can kind of like grasp. And so I think chess is quite sexy. We looked at other things. There were some other ideas. I personally like space and black holes and planets and things like that. Some other folks were thinking about Greek mythology. There was some other kind of ideas, but I think chess fits it perfectly. You know, it's strategic. It's a bit of a geek's game. And also I know it harks back to one of Silvio's loves.
No, I think the chess thing is absolutely perfect. Because like I said, like chess is a battle and crypto is a battle. Like we're all fighting for our share in this bid here. And, you're 100% right. Like with where Algorand sits, its positioning right now, I think really the only direction is up from the forum as, the blockchain itself and from the community as a whole. And especially off, the back of this roadmap, I mean, looking at this roadmap, man, I really want to break this thing down. What I see here is that we're looking at a push towards a more decentralized future. And the two, quote, transformational upgrades helping us get there are the transition to a peer-to-peer network and the introduction of incentivizing consensus. And we will dive into both of those concepts in a moment. Sure. But in your own opinion, how will these two, massive upgrades from the roadmap help drive widespread adoption for Algorand moving forward?
Yeah. Great question, AJ. And look, by the way, I should give a quick shout out to the Recoup. I know he's listening right now, and I was on a show earlier on. I said I'd give him a shout out. He's one of my faves, and I'm going to be on the Recoup in the next couple of weeks. I'm looking forward to it. Nice. I just see him there in the audience. Good to see you, buddy. And so yeah. Look, there's a whole bunch of stuff in here that I think is critical, and like it's across a whole bunch of different kind of tenets of what we need to do. So some of it's addressing decentralization, some of it's addressing security, some of it's addressing sustainability, some of it's addressing user experience and developer experience. And so there's some broad themes, but in general, like there's a lot in here that addresses different areas. So we're fighting on all fronts to use your analogy of kind of a battle. And so to directly answer your question, consensus incentives and peer-to-peer as two technologies, and let me break that down for people because I know there's lots of people who I just assume know things, and I want to make sure that I'm even if it bores a couple of the people in the audience, I want to make sure that everyone gets it. Consensus incentives is a term we use to describe the fact that from now on, not from now on, but from say Q2, Q3 this year, so by some mid this year, the Algorand protocol will pay proposers and validators of blocks. So if you're actively involved in consensus, you're processing transactions known as mining in Bitcoin, but say on Algorand, it's a proof of stake network or a pure proof of stake. And so there we call it, validating transactions. If you're doing that work, at the moment, you don't get paid for it. By the middle of this year, you will get paid. There will be a reward in Algo for that act of putting blocks in the blockchain. So that's consensus incentives in a nutshell. And secondly, peer-to-peer we call it peer-to-peer because it comes from the expression of sending information from a peer, so from a person to a person directly, rather than going through a middleman. And so, folks, I know there's lots of people in the audience who understand this implicitly, but just to state it, Algorand right now has a network topology or a network design where the consensus nodes are in the middle, running the VRF and doing the Silvio magic, okay, and keeping the blockchain in sync, but they don't talk to each other. They talk instead out to this ring or relay nodes, right? And the data travels around this ring, and so consensus nodes or participation nodes talk to the relay nodes directly, but not to each other. And so we recognize, of course, that although that has virtue in some ways from a design point of view, it's not optimal from a decentralization point of view. For a decentralization point of view, you don't want to have any chicanes or any, what do they call it, like bottlenecks in the design of the system where you're reliant on a small number of nodes or people or entities to do the right thing. And so we're going to be moving away from this style of depending on relays to a new system where we still have the speed of relays, but we don't have to depend upon them. There's always a path for your data, your blocks, your transactions to travel from consensus node or participation node, as it's known, to the next consensus node or participation node without any middleman or any kind of relay. And so, two things that I just described, really important for both the decentralization and the security of the network. And so, why is that? Well, they marry well together, a little bit like toffee and apple, or strawberries and cream. And the reason they marry well together is because consensus incentives will naturally encourage individuals to get out there, open their computers, run an Algorand node. It's not computationally heavy. It won't cause your computer to get hot. It won't cause your fans to spin on your laptop. Certainly not after it syncs. And folks will be running these nodes because now they're going to get rewarded. They're going to get more algo for staking their algo. Okay, this is good. And so we have more consensus nodes, or I call them consensus nodes because I think it's easier to understand, but more participation nodes that are out there doing consensus, making blocks, and securing the network, making sure that it's harder to cause any security issue with the network. The more algo that's staked, the more consensus nodes that there are, the more decentralized and secure the network is. Then we hit them with the follow-up, which is peer-to-peer. And so now that we have many more of these consensus or participation nodes all out there, they form this like network, this like neural pathways of data propagation. And so now there's loads of different paths, loads of different roads from consensus node to consensus node that your blocks and transactions can flow. And so step one, increase the security of the network, increase the nodes, get people involved, get them rewarded for running nodes. Step two, start to rely on those nodes for the transit of blocks and data in the network, making it strongly decentralized. And so it's just a 1-2 killer blow.
I mean, well put. And that really is the 1-2 punch of, how we're going to drive widespread adoption for Algorand moving forward. I completely see how well those two bits work together. And I do want to circle back to some of that in a minute. But, in terms of the peer-to-peer, gossip whisper style network we're moving towards, I mean, tell me if I'm right or wrong here. But to me, based off what I read, based off what you just said, this kind of silences a lot of the naysayers who tried to claim that Algorand is decentralized. I mean, is that a fair assessment?
Or rather, that Algorand isn't.
Yeah, it's not exactly. I misspoke. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. No problems whatsoever. So yeah, there's a lot of folks out there. And by the way, criticism is good. I mean, I think it's good to hold a light up to things and see them in the reality that they are, because deluding yourself. I remember when I was in like the early privacy game, like trying to I invested very early in Monero, and I was really I'm still a huge proponent of privacy on blockchain. And so I remember at the time there was like cryptocurrencies like Verge and Dash that were saying that they were private, and they weren't. They objectively weren't. If you held them up to the light and you looked at them cryptographically from an engineering point of view, they were bullshit. And so it's really important, from a privacy point of view. And so it's really important that we don't talk, we don't fool ourselves, and we don't consider ourselves better than we are. And so some of the criticisms were a little bit heavy-handed, because I felt like, functionally we are actually very decentralized. But I can see the angle that people like Justin Bonds and other commentators and other industry pundits come from. They look at this and they say, well, this could be improved. And you know what? We didn't have to do this. We could have spent that engineering time or those resources doing something else that was sexier or more glamorous. We could have added, I don't know, we could have pretended we had a trillion transactions a second and add some bullshit like that. But instead we didn't. We recognize that, the network is extremely fast. And what's more appropriate now is to go back and focus on things that are maybe less sexy to some people, because, you can't get up on stage and talk so much about it the way they do with some cryptocurrencies. But these are important things if you truly care about the virtues of crypto, right? If you truly care about this decentralization, self-sovereignty, permissionlessness, censorship resistance, these things are things you want to make sure you get right. And so I'm proud that the team have chosen to go address these criticisms and ensure that the protocol essentially is, people say this term, I know I totally said it the other day about Solana, is like a cockroach protocol, is one that just cannot be stamped out, right? Is resilient. And so by making it decentralized, by not relying on relays, by having options for people to basically run this network by themselves without the foundation, without the ink, these are the things we need to do to make it truly, the crypto dream, and that's what we've decided to do. But at the same time, of course, we're concentrating on some other things to make it faster, like dynamic round times, and indeed things like AlgoKit 2.0, which is going to be just a super slick dev UX.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I wanted to ask you about next on the roadmap. I mean, many of us in the audience are familiar with AlgoKit 2.0, bringing Python to Algorand and literally opening the door for millions of developers to build on Algorand. We all see the silver lining with the accessibility and, even more importantly, the innovation. And the exact line from the roadmap that I want to focus on here is this. I'm going to read it straight from the roadmap. We're not stopping there. The smart contract experience will also be upgraded, and the rollout of app building libraries will allow users to easily incorporate third-party smart contracts into their own applications. And when I read over the roadmap a couple times, and I feel like some people might have read over that specific line and its implications. Can you elaborate on how the smart contract experience will be upgraded? Because it kind of feels to me that that's sort of like the rocket fuel for the trip to the moon. I don't know. Maybe I'm right or wrong there.
Yeah. And the rocket fuel is the rocket is fueled by the tears of the non-believers. You got to know that. And
nice.
so
I like that. I like that.
and so there's something nice about being able to work on something like AlgoKit 3 and drop these like mic drop moments, of course. The problem is you got to balance that with like not doing things in private too much, because this is not like iPhone 16. This is an open source decentralized project. And so, although it may be a little bit less exciting and a little bit less mic droppy towards the end of the year, where we come out with these like heavy statements about like all the cool things we're doing that are totally new and no one's ever heard of them, so we won't be able to do that. But what with the balance, so what we get back for being more open is that you guys can contribute now. So we're going to be developing everything in open source. So the development of AlgoKit 3.0, including all the tickets that make up the features, including all the epics that make up the requirements, including the issues, the pull requests, the if you like internal dev, so the work that the foundation are doing on a day-to-day basis, it's all going to be in the open on GitHub from now, I believe. I mean, if it's not now, it'll be like by the next few days, but I think it's already open. And so we actively want people to get out there and get involved in this. We want you to develop AlgoKit with us. We're going to have like badges for people who get involved, and we're going to try and champion and make it gamified a little bit so that we get people excited about it. To answer your question, there are some crucial things. Like AlgoKit's pretty good right now. Like, just to remind people, with AlgoKit version 1, we started where people were developing Teal and PyTeal in some text editor. Wasn't great. No automation, no CI/CD, no test frameworks, just a bit shit, really. AlgoKit 1.0 came along, and we now have a command line tool that helps you build, test, and deploy, right? It helps you initialize new projects. It helps you kind of templatize projects. It helps you compile your code. It helps you do continuous integration and continuous deployments. It helps you do grown-up things with software engineering. AlgoKit 2.0 is where we bring Python, right? And so this is critical. Still with 1.0, you're still in production. You're writing your code in Teal and PyTeal, which is a nuanced language that not a lot of people know. It's Algorand specific. So Teal is like the assembly for Algorand, and so it's very low level, and PyTeal is half a step above that. So it's not great experience. We have it in developer preview right now, so you can go and you can play with it at this moment. So we have Python on Algorand right now, but we're saying that it's not fully ready for public consumption, and we're going to be releasing it in March of this year, so in a couple of months. Or a month and a half. And so when we do this, I think it's a watershed moment for Algorand. You got to remember that these platforms like Algorand and Ethereum and Cardano, they are essentially operating systems. They are essentially distributed computers. You run code on them. You run your applications on them. We call those apps dApps or smart contracts, but you are writing code and it is being run by other people. And so we got to make it easy for developers to realize their vision, to realize their dream, their game, their idea. If we make it really hard, they're just going to go somewhere else. And so AlgoKit 2.0 is a watershed moment where we bring a language that's used by everyone from students to quantitative analysts at banks, and everyone in between, the AI, ML guys, the proof of concept people, everyone who's prototyping. So many people understand Python. And so this opens the floodgates so that we have hundreds of thousands, millions of developers around the world that have an intuitive understanding of the syntax with which you need to build applications on Algorand. So this is super important. So that's a brief history of 1.0 and 2.0, with 2.0 kind of dropping in a couple of months. And so now you asked, hey, what's coming in 3.0? What do I mean by all this stuff around the local developer experience and enhancing that and allowing you to bring in libraries and stuff like that? So the wonderful thing about using Python, actual Python, not a different flavor of Python, not kind of like a Python++, it's just normal Python, is that we can take libraries off the shelf and we can select parts of them to include and make available for people. And so now the types of libraries that make life easy for quantitative developers, for options traders, for people working in banks, for people working in software engineering, those same libraries, not all of them, because not all of them are appropriate in a smart contract, but many of them will be possible to use on Algorand out of the box. On top of that, we're going to be bringing the ability to kind of build your app in a little bit more of a Lego brick style, right? Where you start off with someone else's work and you kind of stack on top of that like a Jenga brick, and you stack on top of that. And so this Jenga brick style approach is what we mean when we describe those kind of templates and libraries that are going to help you build. And so not only is the language easy, not only can you leverage frameworks that already exist, but now that we also have a mechanism to quickly and easily build things sky high, leveraging the work of other people. And then, to give a flavor for the other kind of high level features that I think are going to kill with AlgoKit 3, we're going to be bringing another language, another extremely popular language. I want to let Alessandro and the wonderful team who look after this kind of break that news in a way that's a bit more exciting. But we're going to add yet another language on top of Python, which is going to open the doors to basically everyone else who doesn't know Python. And we're going to focus on the developer experience. And there's two things I'd like to call out here that I think are super cool. One, right now, you kind of need to install Python and all that kind of stuff. A lot of Python libraries and a lot of Python frameworks in order to use AlgoKit. It kind of depends on a whole load of Python-y things. It's normal, okay? We write it in Python, that's okay. But we want to get to a place where you can just run that on any computer. And so even if you're someone who doesn't have a Python kind of developer environment set up, you can just run it like an app. And so for 3.0, we're going to be releasing a version of AlgoKit, which is just an app that you can run locally. You don't need loads of dependencies. They're all baked in. Just like when you run a game, you don't have to have all these dependencies. That's number one. And number two, we're going to be focusing on the developer experience at a level that usually is only focused on by enterprise grade, mature languages and mature ecosystems. I'm talking about like the Golang, Rust, NPM type stuff. And so, NPM is a package manager, but the Node.js type stuff. And so what I mean by that is we're going to have line by line debugging. So right now, if you want to debug, you're debugging your teal after writing it in Python. With 3.0, you're going to be able to do a line by line debug in your Python and in the next language that we bring. And so what this means is if people find bugs in their code, they don't have to step down into like the bowels or the sewers of their app. They can stay up in a high level language where it makes sense and debug where you don't need to hold the mental model of your entire application in your head at the same time. And so these are critical things, but long story short, Algorand's open for business and it's open for everyone, no matter how good you or bad you are at software engineering.
Wow, dude, thank you for that detailed explanation, not only on what we already have from AlgoKit, but what is coming in the future. I mean, I remember the second it was put out that Python was going to be available, my brain went straight to, all right, what's coming after Python? Because if you can do that, you can do everything else. And that would just open the floodgates up that much more. Really fast, some quick housekeeping for us in the Twitter space here. There's about 260 people in the house right now. Make sure you smash the like button and retweet this space while we are still in the first half of it. Really appreciate each and every one of you that's inside the AlgoFam or outside the AlgoFam. Like, I don't want this interview, this space to just be for inside baseball with Algorand. I want it to be from the outsiders looking in to see what is actually being built here and how amazing the tech is. So, John, to continue on with the roadmap, the section on the Queen's Gambit, great show on Netflix, by the way. But essentially, for the chess players out there, the Queen's Gambit is a popular chess opening that involves sacrificing a pawn for a greater strategic advantage. And in terms of the roadmap, the sacrifice here is the relay nodes. And to be clear, they still exist, but not exactly the way they did in the past. Can you elaborate a little more on the significance of this sacrifice?
Sure. So we want to be very careful stewards of the algo that we hold. And so everyone across the foundation has a mandate to be cost obsessed about how we spend things. Okay, so we think twice. We think twice before we spend anything. And so we have tightened things up. But I've mentioned on many other interviews before, like we scrub the deck, the ship is clean, it's tight. Like we don't have any obvious areas of waste. At the same time, you look at the relay network, which is going to be around for a little while because we're rolling out peer-to-peer. I expect towards the end of this year, like it's going to be a Q3, Q4 kind of upgrade. And so we have some time where we're going to be running relays still. And even after peer-to-peer, relays are optional. So you absolutely do not need them. You can just use the peer-to-peer network completely with zero reliance on the foundation or relays or anything else. But if people want to run relays, they're still an option for people who want very high frequency trading and other things like that. And so we recognize that the relay is the heaviest bit. Like if you look at the relay and you think, well, how much does it cost to run a relay per year? And so the global relay network is expensive. It's millions of dollars a year that it costs to hire a globally distributed, cloud vendor agnostic network of very high performance machines that have, and this is probably the most important bit, huge disk space. You need like, well, not huge like Solana huge, but like, you know, relatively large disk space. So not petabytes, but terabytes. You need like 3 terabytes of storage. Now, you're probably thinking, that's not that much, John. I've got 2 terabytes of storage on my laptop. And you'd be right. It's not that much in the grand scheme of things. But it still costs money to have highly performant disks available in a cloud context where you're renting them from Amazon or Google, or you're doing bare metal in a data center. And so it turns out we don't need those things. So we've made an optimization to the relays. And folks will remember that the Algorand code base is a single code base. I mean, there's a bunch of different repos, but essentially it's a single code base that defines all of the code for the node. And it has a polymorphic behavior. And what I mean by that is it changes its behavior depending on how it's configured. And so it can be configured as a consensus node or relay node. And now it can be configured as a non-archival relay node. And so what this means is, in a nutshell, it's a relay without the blockchain, without a full copy of the chain. It only keeps the last, say, 1,000 blocks or whatever, right? A bit like a consensus node or a participation node. And so this will dramatically reduce our cost of execution for relays. And anyone who now wants to run a relay also doesn't need to have like 3 terabytes of highly performant NVMe SSD in the cloud. So the sacrifice is, you know, talking about the Queen's Gambit, the pawn is really that we are reducing, in a way, I guess, the number of full archival nodes on the network, but we're doing so in a way that there's still absolutely the right number of nodes that are out there to seed the network for anyone who starts a node fresh and just wants to get a full copy of the chain, but without having waste. And so again, it's another efficiency measure. We don't need hundreds of these relays holding these full copies of the chain, and that's what non-archival relays will be. And where does that, you know, it's cash savings that essentially gives us more funds to invest in the ecosystem.
Exactly. I that's what I kind of interpreted myself. It was kind of about becoming self-sufficient completely. And when there's all this excess going on, it just doesn't make sense to keep them in that form. So I think that's a perfect Queen's Gambit, in my opinion. So to keep the ball rolling here, I really do want to touch back on the consensus incentivization. And I mean, this is the first significant upgrade to Algorand's consensus mechanism since the beginning, since its inception. I mean, John, this is a big deal. And I want to talk about the significance of this decision because, to be honest with you, in my eyes, this incentive is like the crypto equivalent to a supercharger in an engine. Like, would you agree with that assessment?
I think outside of, you know, changing the language to Python, which I think was essential, I think it's probably the biggest thing that's happened in the history of Algorand since we released the first node. I think it's huge. The paper as well, you know, we released a paper, and not everyone will have seen it, but there's a paper out there, a white paper. It's about like 15 pages or 14 pages. And it kind of goes through our thinking on how we're going to approach this, on how engineering think it should be done. This is a discussion paper, so these are not final decisions. Okay, this is it's not a specification. It's a discussion paper, and it's to kind of get people thinking about it. And we want your feedback. It was written by Naveed, Michaela, JJ, and I, and so that they are, you know, the 4 of us work across the foundation and on Algorand Technologies /Inc. And so we feel that we have, you know, within that paper, kind of captured the essence of what we're trying to do. But if you look at it, like empirically, if you look at what's happened with the formation around decentralization on Algorand, we want nodes out there. We want as many consensus or participation nodes as possible. We want, you know, within reason, as I've mentioned on some of my Twitter replies, you know, millions of nodes don't make sense, of course, because the network will become too congested. But we want a large number of nodes, of course. We want a large number of algo being staked. The more algo that's staked, the more secure the network is. And so this is like a North Star for me. Decentralization and security of the network are paramount. They're number one ahead of everything else. And this move, where we're changing our thesis. Originally, you know, the conjecture was that, as I've kind of, this is all in the paper, but just in a nutshell, the conjecture was enough people would altruistically stake their algo of their, you know, their own goodwill, run the computers, deal with the headache that is running those computers, or the friction of, you know, getting you know, software running on a computer all the time, that it would secure the network. Well, you know, we've seen a posteriori, or you know, empirically, that that just doesn't seem, a critical mass of stakers doesn't seem to be there. Yes, we have some, but you know, I want more, and we want more. And so we think the right thing to do is to start using some of the funds that we're currently using, as an example, to pay things like voting and governance, to use them instead to secure the network. Now, I appreciate that this is a tectonic kind of shift in the thinking and the thesis around Algorand. And of course, we've done it consulting folks at the foundation, the Inc., and now we bring it to the community because it's reasonably well thought out. And so now it's in a place where we can discuss it with the community. If I brought this to the community in a one-liner, it wouldn't be well formed enough, and people would be like, oh, that's a bad idea. And so what we tried to do is put our kind of full thesis down in a bit of paper that says, hey, this is the reasons, this is why, this is the angles. Because by making these changes, you do introduce new gaming angles, you do introduce new threat vectors, you do have to think about how the network will perform, how the topology will change. This is a shift away from Silvio's original thinking around how things would work. But a few years into the game now, we just think it's the right choice, and so we bring it for the consideration of the community, and it's a work in progress, and it's very much open to influence. But I think after we do this, we will have one of the most secure and decentralized networks out there, and that's got to be, core to our DNA and core to our focus.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, to add consensus to it will just supercharge everything. It will have more stakers. It will have more security of the network. It makes the most sense, in my opinion, out of everything on the roadmap.
Right. And as I kind of mentioned earlier on, if we didn't do this, so if we didn't have consensus incentives in place with the current number of participation nodes, or consensus nodes, as I like to call them, we wouldn't have the density of pathways for data propagation. Okay, so we wouldn't, that switch to peer-to-peer, which is truly decentralizing the data layer of the network, that wouldn't have been able to come about because we just wouldn't have had the density of nodes there to essentially transit that data across the network. And so I think it's definitely the right choice. But there's lots of questions out there. I've tried to address some people's concerns, and of course I understand why you have concerns. If there was monumental shifts in the thinking or architecture for something that I held and loved for so long, of course I care about this, and I want to be involved in the decision making. And so I care about that, and I understand that, and I'm empathetic to it, and I want to understand how people think. What I would just say is, when you're reading the paper, and I released a little video that came with it to kind of try to walk through it, not in massive depth, but just to kind of give a flavor for what the thinking was in the different sections. But when you're looking at this paper and you're looking at it, for example, one of the things I'd like to bring up is people have said, hey, what about this minimum amount of stake? And what about this maximum amount of stake? I don't like that, because I was told one algo, one vote. And I get it. I get that. And it still is one algo, one vote. But what we're kind of saying is, well, there's a minimum entry to the club, right? If you want to be part of the club of voters, you got to be, staking with, say, X number of algo. Now, in the paper, I think I say something like, you need about 8,192 algo as a minimum. It's a suggestion as an example. But someone pointed out, okay, maybe that's $2,000 today, and it's not crazy, depending on where you live in the world. But in the future, if algo is $2, well, that's $16,000, and that is a lot of money, I think, objectively, pretty much everywhere in the world. And so these are, again, these are not decisions; these are suggestions. I'm going to maybe go through the why in 2 seconds, but also they're configurable. And so we intend to make these things parameters, not hard-coded, and so that you can actually make these changes over time. And they should go for change consideration to things like governance. Governance should be voting on some of the most important topics, and these things become important measures that can be voted on in the future. They're very meaningful. And just to address the min max. The max was put in place very simply for one reason, essentially. And the reason is, if we allowed any like arbitrary amount of algo, we could potentially hit a stall if an individual was to have an enormous amount of algo. Let's say there was one individual with 20% of the algo. It doesn't, I don't know anyone who's holding that much, but let's pretend. If a person went online with 20% of the algo on a computer and then just turned off the computer without going offline appropriately or elegantly, the network would stall. And this is part of the security assumptions of the network. And so we want to make sure that we have a kind of a limit there, that you can't run that much algo trivially on a single node, or can't stake that much algo on a single node. And then for the minimum, there's a couple of reasons why we have the kind of suggested minimum, which may be lower, by the way. The first is because if you look in the gaming mitigation section, we need to try to remove inactive stakers from the network so that they don't harm the network. Because people who say they're going to stake and then who don't stake, that's not a good thing for Algorand for a bunch of techie reasons. Yep. And so we have this idea that, one, if we introduce kind of some kind of minimum, we kind of weed out a lot of the folks who maybe are kind of half interested, but know that they're not going to, a person with 10 algo or 100 algo, maybe there's a few that do care about staking it, but in general, they'll be voting so seldomly that it probably doesn't make sense. And we don't want to have millions of people with a very tiny amount, like 10 algo, 100 algo, 1,000 algo, because it'll be a lot of work to for the network to cope with them going on and off all the time. And the second reason, and this is much more technical and more important, I guess, is because with the absenteeism thing, that the way the network handles, or the way the protocol will handle people who say they're going to be there and then are not there when the VRF comes knocking to ask for the validation of a block or the proposal of a block, it requires nodes to hold the entire staking set in memory at the same time. So in the computer's RAM. And so, as folks will know, computers have like 16 gigs of RAM, whatever, 32 gigs of RAM, etc. And so we need that to be bound. We need some kind of like bound on the number of stakers so that we can ensure that it's able to sit in a reasonable amount of RAM. And so I guess what I'm trying to say in a nutshell is there's lots of things in the paper that maybe at first glance you might think, I don't really like that. It's a little antithetical to what I was told before about Algorand. But there are hard engineering reasons why we've suggested the things that we have, and I hope people understand that.
I mean, they should understand it. I mean, we're shaping and growing as a community, as crypto as a whole, not just Algorand. And like even with the regulations and everything, there has to be a certain amount of pros and cons and weighing out and making big decisions like this. And I think for a self-sustainable future, for a more decentralized future, I see it 100%. And I also know that like you're also very open to working out. I feel like every hardball that's got thrown at Algorand, you guys have found the way to hit the ball and knock it out of the park every time. So I do give you props for that. So, but John, I just want to say, first of all, the roadmap, very well done. It's amazing. I feel like everyone is really seeing the lining here, the silver lining here. And I do want to touch on topics outside of the roadmap
Sure.
on this interview while I still have you here. But before I do that, is there anything else on the roadmap that we didn't get to touch on that you want to talk about before we keep rolling, or did we hit it all?
So the only thing I think we didn't go into in detail is dynamic round times. Folks have seen that. It's brought the block time from 3 seconds down to 2.8 or so, 2.9, depending. And I think it's been a huge success. It's an efficiency enhancement to the network. What we're basically doing with dynamic lambda is saying, well, if you take 100% of the nodes out there, or 100% of the people that are proposing, there's always a few slow coaches, right? There's always like that one dude who runs late to the tube or the subway and like puts in his hand and tries to block the door. We're not letting that person block the door anymore and hold up the train. Okay, and that's what dynamic lambda is. It just kind of slices a tiny bit of the late people off in order for the rest of the train to get going quickly. I just like to shout out to like my colleagues at the foundation, because I didn't write really a word of this 2024 roadmap. Of course, I was talking about it and part of the journey, but like we have people who've written this, who've created the graphics, who've spent time thinking about the framing, the branding, the whole lot, and I think they've done a terrific job bringing this about. And so I just want to say thanks to everyone who helped this. I may be the face of it today, but like it's the work of like tens of people, if not more. So I appreciate everyone who worked on it.
For sure. Big shout out to everybody on the team and the entire ecosystem. I mean, there's so many people involved with Algorand at some level. If it's a project, if it's the foundation, if it's the other side of the I mean, so many people. Definitely big. We should all definitely be proud of how far we've gone so far. And so we went from 4 seconds to 3.3 seconds to now 2 seconds. I have to change the lyrics of the song I wrote every month because you guys, are just keep getting better.
And here's some alpha for you. We can actually take dynamic round times. Dynamic Lambos the Sicilian defense has not stopped giving, and so we'll be able to make further optimizations. We wanted to take a cut at it and decide, okay, like how does the network perform when we do this? Because we want to be very careful stewards of the network. But we can push a little bit harder on dynamic Lambos or the Sicilian defense, and we can get it to a place where it's increasing block time even further. But we're going to conservatively, if you like, make those changes.
For sure. It's just going to keep getting faster over time. I see. Of course, it's going to be 1 second in like 6 weeks. I'm watching it. I see what you're up to. I see what you're up to. All right. So, So next, I do have a couple questions from the audience that I'm going to get to in a couple minutes here. But of course, we're approaching the back nine of this space. Of this, some of you might be watching this on the video re-record later. But John, I do have to throw you some hardballs here. I have to. Everyone wants me to. I have to do it. So here we go. I'm going to start off with tokenomics. But to be fair, I really don't think this is as tough as a question as it used to be, because it's a fixed supply and 80% of the max supply is already in circulation. So we really don't have that far to go. But but simply put, there's a lot of theories in regards to how fast the rest of the algo supply will come into circulation. Some people think the last 20 is going to come in pretty fast, and others, including myself, think it's going to come in a lot slower. And my line of thinking here is that if it comes in too fast, Algorand loses its ability to help support and grow the ecosystem. So without asking for a direct timeline, would you agree with my assessment that I feel like it's going to come in slower?
So yeah, let me just say that the whole idea of the Algorand Unfiltered show and premise is that we do ask the questions from the community that they want answers to, and I think we should be held accountable for the things that they're concerned about. So I'm totally cool with going into these. At the same time, I'm the CTO, not the CFO, and so my world is very focused on the things we just talked about for the last kind of 40 minutes, and so I'm not an expert in these on the financials. But what I will say is this: the care with which we handle algo is second to none. There's not a single person. I put it this way: we even got rid of Calendly this week because it was like $1,000 a year because Google have a free one. Okay, we are very, very careful with how we spend money. The second thing is we have, thanks to Harpal, who's come in as the CFO, we have a really strong transparency report that goes out quarterly, and we've been on time with it, thankfully, for the last couple of quarters. The current one for Q4 2023 has been prepped. I think it's nearly complete, and it will be issued very soon. And so within that report, they've kind of broken down all of the spend across tech, across all the other sides of the business that I can't even remember. And so you can extrapolate from that. You can look at that report. You can see exactly how much we're spending per quarter, the quarter previous, and you can essentially extrapolate. And that's what I would do, is just look at those reports, see the global spend, and then extrapolate that into the future. But yes, I agree with your assessment. We are being very, very careful. I'm spending it like it's my parents' money. It's not sorry. I spend my parents' money. Some people blow their parents' money.
I would have to say you spend your parents' money way different than I spend my parents. I'm just saying.
I'm very careful with my parents' money. So yeah, we are very careful stewards. And if you want a real metric on it, you want a quantitative look at it rather than listen to words, you can go look at the transparency reports and extrapolate it. But as you will see, we are being very careful stewards of the funds.
Yep. Well put. And like you said, you are the CTO, and I still feel like you have pretty good answers to all these questions. So I'm not gonna. I feel like you still answer them pretty good. And I do have another hardball for you, but you actually kind of just answered it in how you answered the question before about tokenomics, because a lot of people are thinking it. I'm just going to say it. I'm going to say the word, and the word is marketing. And it's the biggest 9-letter word in crypto. And of course, with the rumors of the rebrand, we have to dive into it. And my question is this: we saw, the push with the FIFA partnership and big sponsorship dollars like that. In the future, where do you see that money being redirected to?
Yeah. So great question. And so maybe I'll just take this opportunity to kind of clarify this. The FIFA deal was an Inc. or technologies-led initiative. It wasn't one at the foundation. Now, I know it was a big deal, and I appreciate that we are all in it together in a certain way, in a certain kind of spirit of things, of course. But ultimately, that didn't come from marketing and biz dev or whatever at the foundation. It came from our colleagues at Algorand Inc. /Technologies as they're now known. So in a way, it's not like we've gone from spending gargantuan amounts of money on marketing at the foundation, and now we have all that pot to redirect. We are still very focused on making sure that we get value from money in whatever we market. I agree with you, though, as I've said on spaces before. this industry, like it or not, is kind of half tech, half marketing. I kind of still very much believe that core to my philosophy on cryptocurrency and on the Web3 space.
Yep.
We still don't yet have, we haven't not yet hired a replacement CMO. Okay. We are actively trying to replace that, and there's candidates going through in the interview process at the moment, and so we care about it. We're going to fill the role, but we want to be meticulous about who we bring in. I am not the hiring manager for that role, clearly, but we are very carefully trying to bring the talent on board to do that. I think, though, if I could sum up what I think is the thinking and the thesis at the foundation around marketing generally, if I look at the work that Min is doing with her wonderful team and communities, and Christine under her leadership, and then the work that my team do around the techie stuff, and the work that the biz dev people do, it's kind of grassroots. Like, grassroots is the name of the game. It's doing stuff like this with you. I'm going to be on some pretty prominent podcasts and interviews over the next couple of weeks. We're starting to get invited, thankfully, to speak at some of the really kind of exciting and big speaking venues. We just did CFC. We have someone at Davos. Christine's actually at Davos. We just did CFC. I met with, like, as you've seen from my photographs, I met with Lehman Baird at Hedera. I met with Anthony Scaramucci and others. And so, there's a lot of grassroots networking and momentum building going on, and I'm very excited about it. But that doesn't cost money, right? It doesn't cost money. Well, it costs plane ticket, but it doesn't cost a ton of money to do that kind of marketing. And I think grassroots is where we need to be.
100%. If you can win in the streets, you're going to win on the charts, because that's really where it's at, in my opinion. It's always been like that. Even like with music bands trying to get following, it's about how many live shows do you play? Oh, you're not playing live shows. Well, no one's going to find you. And I really feel like that translate well, like the winning in the streets translates very well in crypto for sure. And, you did touch on something there. And I do want to say this, John, about a week ago, I had probably one of the best days I've had in recent history. And this was such a good day. I woke up, I refreshed my phone, and I did not believe my eyes, because I saw a photo of you on a stage, shaking hands with Dr. Lehman Baird, the co-founder of Hedera. And what brought you two together was decentralized recovery. Can we discuss DREC and the role Algorand will play in it?
Absolutely. So I met Lehman on a call a few months back, like personally. Of course, I knew him from the industry. And we just hit it off. Like, he's just a really interesting guy. He's, we cut from the same cloth. I mean, he's obviously an academic and very accomplished, but we're both into cryptography. We're both into applied cryptography, software engineering, that kind of stuff. And so I found it very easy to chat to him. And at the end of the call, he said, "Hey, why don't we spend? I've got a new initiative. I think it's important." And so he said, "Why don't we just jump on a call and we can talk about it?" So I said, "Cool." So, way prior to CFC, which is the crypto financial conference at San Moritz, which is an invite-only conference full of industry kind of leaders. Way prior to when I met him in person there, we were chatting about DREC. For me, DREC was an easy thing for Algorand to be involved with. Okay, for two big chunky reasons. Reason number one, it is one of the fundamental user experience problems that we see in the industry. I know everyone gets that. Like, I've lost my keys have been compromised, blah, 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 Sorry, not my keys have been compromised, because of course it doesn't help with that, but I've lost my keys. I don't know where my ledger is. I've written down my seed and I can't find it. These are critical user experience issues, and they have to be eradicated if we're going to have the normal person use this technology, especially with the responsibility of self-sovereignty for people who have their pensions in this or have their life savings in it, etc. Okay, that's number one. Number two, Lehman's approach to DREC, so this decentralized recovery of your keys, to securely custody your keys with multiple people in a mathematically secure, using mathematically secure technologies, and doing so in a way that you can rely upon those folks when the time comes and you need to recover your keys. His approach was agnostic to any blockchain. It was nonpartisan. It didn't leverage Hedera tech. It didn't leverage Algorand tech, Cardano tech, state proofs, Mithril. It didn't leverage anything proprietary. It didn't leverage or everything that it leveraged was bread and butter cryptography. And so I love that. I was taken by it because it wasn't an attempt to blow the profile of Hedera up a little bit and make it a bit more exciting and make it the leader of a thing. It was like, hey, I truly believe this. It was a thing for common good. Lehman wanted to solve a problem that affected users of the industry that he works in. And so it was kind of a no-brainer when he comes with a great protocol that he's obviously a smart guy, and his team have created. When I look at this protocol, it makes perfect sense. It's checking all the boxes in terms of being secure, using well understood cryptographic primitives. It's not trying to be blockchain, aligned with any particular blockchain. There's no token. It's just well engineered technology for dispersing your key securely amongst people you trust, and checking that they have it on a daily basis to make sure that you don't get caught out. And then when you need to recover your key, you can go to these people in a secure way. I thought, wow, great idea. And so the Algorand Foundation is proud to be a founding member of this DREC Alliance. And so there's a handful of other seats as founding members, and then you can join as a company or an entity at a different layer. But by joining as a founding member, you get, to start rolling forward the technology and being part of the technical committee and other great things. And so it's open. And we want other blockchains to be part of it. So great. If Tolly wants to send people from Solana, I would love that. Yeah. If Charles wants to send people from Cardano, great. Ripple, whoever, even people that you might see as industry competitors or arch nemesis in some way. I think this is a great initiative. I think it's really going to help people. I applaud Lehman's work on it, and I'm proud to be part of it with the Algorand Foundation.
Yeah, I mean, I find it very funny. I actually saw Lehman Baird speak at Web3 Atlanta probably 2 months ago, and his whole speech, his whole hour was about decentralized recovery. And then hearing it straight from him for an hour, 90 minutes, he stayed late to answer questions and getting to meet him afterwards. Class act for sure. And then to learn that, Algorand is actually going to help him with that same initiative. I was just blown away that I even had a chance to he just happened to be speaking in Atlanta. I was like, okay, so I have to ask, is there a potential for more collaboration with Hedera outside of the DREC Alliance? Because, I've been thinking, John, we have the AlgoFam and they have the H Barbarians, and I'm members of both tribes. Right. could we have the Halgo Barbarians? Is there a where somehow, some way, I think there's something there.
Well, I know, as I said to Lehman, crypto is tribal. And I have my own, my own personal thesis on what I consider the best architectures and the best cryptography and other things. And there are aspects to the Hedera architecture that I would probably prefer were changed in certain ways. Okay, everyone's got their own technical view on things. But one thing I will say is that the team at Hedera are incredibly professional from working with them for the last few months. They're incredibly capable. And Lehman and his engineers are second to none, right? They're incredible people. And so yes, I would be more than happy to work with Hedera because they're easy to work with and they're smart people. And so yeah, Lehman was wonderful to chat with. And by the way, he believes, and I agree with him, that for this thing to be the most successful it can be, it needs people to come along and get involved. And so this is not about kind of making it the Lehman and John show. I want as many blockchains and entities to get involved as possible. It really is. Otherwise, it won't work. We need everyone to be playing by the same rules. And finally, I think with this DREC technology, the rules are rules that everyone will be okay with.
Yeah. Well put. I definitely I agree with you when you were saying how any and every blockchain could get behind that cause, because when you really hear the whole, I am doing an interview with Lehman, I believe the beginning of February, and I'll definitely go into more for DREC for any of the audience that wants to learn more about that as well. But it's very well put together. I do want to pivot to another topic before we get to the rapid fire audience questions. This is probably the last bigger question, really. So I want to pivot here and talk for a minute about RWAs. And, this is a topic a lot of projects has, RWA initiatives, Hedera, Chainlink, you guys, Algorand. And this is really a conversation we could spend hours just talking about RWAs. And, Algorand is known for being heavily integrated into the future of it, and I wanted, so recently I read this statistic that really intrigued me. That as of right now, the market cap of RWAs in crypto is projected to be somewhere around the $2.2 billion for the market cap of RWAs in crypto right now. But I also saw in this article that by 2030, that is projected to be over $16 trillion. It's 2.2 billion now, projected by 2030, 16 trillion in 6 years. What takes us from point A to point B? And what role does Algorand play in that expansion?
Well, it's an interesting question, and so there's elements of this that I think I know well, and elements of this answer that I'm not really equipped to answer. But what I would say is, what takes us there? I think general acceptance of the concept of tokenization by many different jurisdictions around the world. And so, obviously, to me, it's as obvious as I want to buy plane tickets on the internet. I want to be able to call my girlfriend using the internet. I want to be able to text someone in a different country without paying crazy SMS charges. It's obvious to me that tokenization is one of blockchain's raison d'etres, and it's a perfect use case. The portability of liquidity, the ability to tokenize an asset, trade it globally, portable, make the liquidity globally available, mathematically verifiable. It's basically a perfect fit. In terms of how do we get from what is now, I guess, a proof of concept style level? It's obviously billions of dollars is still a lot of dollars, but how do we get from there to the big leagues? I think the answer is by, as I just mentioned, by various jurisdictions and legal bodies and countries and regulators, getting more comfortable with it, I would say, broadly. And the second thing is having networks that are fit for purpose, having networks that people can understand. If you're working at Citi, you're working at Saxo, you're working at Deutsche, you're working at Goldman, you're working at one of these major banks, you want to be looking at rolling out your liquidity or your RWAs on these platforms. You got to be comfortable with the security of the platform, the resiliency of the platform. Is it going to be there when your customers come to use it, and the scalability of the platform? And so Algorand checks all those boxes, and it also does so in a way where the people who are building the contracts and starting to do the software engineering are using regular programming languages. And so I think a combination of maturity, global maturity by major institutions and by governing bodies to understand this stuff a bit better, because it is a bit tricky to understand sometimes, and also by just giving that best in class, by having a platform that people can trust, rely upon, and feel comfortable developing on, just like Linux. And that's where we're trying to position Algorand.
For sure. But I mean, even if it went to 1/4 of the projected expectation, I mean, that would still be extremely massive for crypto and anyone involved. So I definitely see the silver lining with RWAs there. So I do want, we're definitely in the back nine of the space here. And I put out a tweet the other day, asking the AlgoFam if they could ask you anything, what would it be? And of course, it's very important to both of us that, they have a voice here. So rapid fire, I'm going to go through a few questions from the community. Is that cool with you?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right. So we got a couple here. We got CL Sheriff asked, what do you think about the possibility of enabling trusted addresses permanently or temporary through a change in the contract that you can send tokens to without the need to opt in?
Okay, I like it. So I think what he's suggesting is, and I know Carlos actually from my dealings with him. So I know this gentleman. He's a good actor in the ecosystem. I think what he's suggesting is opting in to opt-ins. So having an opt-in. I kind of like this. As I mentioned before, I'm not a big fan of opt-ins. I appreciate they filter the spam. I understand why people like them. I totally get it. So you can't be sent crap. You can't be tainted, all that kind of stuff. I get that. I love that. But it does cause some friction. We look at Coinbase adding USDCA. Sorry. Yeah. USDCA. They've taken their time because they have to opt in all their customers' wallets and other things. I think they would have been faster. I think we'll get it soon, by the way. I do think that they're coming around to the idea, but it's a layer of friction, this opt-in stuff. So I think having optional, having the option to kind of opt out of opt-ins is a positive thing. But again, as I mentioned before, we got to be very careful when we make these changes, because there's probably applications or dApps or contracts on the network that rely upon this concept, and so we can't rug those and kind of change the rules from under them. And that's one of the harsh realities of blockchain. Once it's there, you got to support it forever.
Yeah, immutability means immutability. But all right. So
it doesn't mean that we can't do something fresh like this, right? It just means that we can't just kind of pull a concept like that immediately from the chain.
I totally understand. So we're going to keep it rolling here. We have our guy G-Host. How do you and Algorand envision implementing a privacy layer to interact with public chain /markets? Any ways to integrate your personal favorite, Monero? Question mark.
Yeah, I mean, like folks know I'm a privacy maxi. I think privacy is very important. You know, if you want to send me an encrypted email, you can do so by just taking my GPG key from my Twitter bio or my X bio. It's right there. It's my public key. You can use it to send me an encrypted email. And so I think it's very, very important. I think it's a human right. And I think networks will only really be absolutely fit for purpose when we have privacy. How does that come about? It's a big change technologically for Algorand. So I think and for other networks like Cardano and Ethereum that don't have native privacy by default. It also adds scaling challenges, as we've seen with other networks like Monero, where it doesn't scale as elegantly as Bitcoin. And so I think it's gonna take time. In the short term, I suspect something like atomic swaps with Monero, or maybe a contract roll on Algorand with ring signatures or something like that will probably be the answer.
Okay, there you go. I hope he's answered. That's a great answer to that question. I'm excited. So we got our guy fantastic.algo. Can you name any promising projects coming down the pipeline, and what will be Algo's biggest use case in the near future? I feel like he snuck two questions in there, but I like them both. So all good.
He did. I'll try to be quick. So I think biggest use case is going to be identity. Identity and tokenization, I think, are probably going to be the biggest use cases. And then secondly, in terms of like exciting projects, I mean, there's a whole ton of people who are building. A lot of them, I can't just like just drop on this podcast because I don't want to upset their launch plans. But one project that I'm particularly a fan of is Book.io. They've recently added support for Algorand, so you can buy books where you own an actual self-sovereign copy of the book that's stored on IPFS. It's your copy of the book. It comes with custom generated cover art, and they're on Algorand, Cardano, and Polygon. And the performance is best when it's used on Algorand. And they're going to be adding tons more books soon. So I think they're a very cool project.
Boom. There you go. Love it. And finally, from the audience questions, Zenobia Godshalk actually made the list here. The SVP comms of Swirl Labs /Adair. I actually interviewed her a little while back. She's super cool. She asked, how can Algo ecosystem partners get involved with the DREC Alliance, and what benefits does it bring them?
Yeah, I mean, so by getting involved with the DREC Alliance, you have a seat at the table for a standard that we think is going to be industry defining. You get to be a steward of the technology. You get to influence its development, and you get to be someone who supports generating a critical gravity mass, a critical well for this standard. And so standards only work if everyone adopts them. HTTPS only works because all the browsers use it. And so we need people to get involved, and there's no reason not to. So please, if you care about the user experience for the average person on blockchain, and you want to make their life a little bit easier, let's get together and set the standard. And I think if you want to get involved, you can either go to the DREC Alliance website. You can come to myself personally. You can go to Zenobia. You can go to anyone who's involved, and they will help you. But we're talking already to a whole bunch of foundations and layer ones who are interested. And so I think it's going to be successful, hopefully.
Yeah, I see the silver lining with that one for sure. And of course, everyone wants you to answer the question, when moon and how high can the price go? But sorry to break it to you guys, John cannot talk about that legally, but guess what? I can. So make sure you check out my updated Algorand price prediction video coming out next week on AJ Writes Crypto. And with that said, John, I guess one of my final questions is, what is the ultimate goal for Algorand, and where do you see it in 5 years?
In 5 years, I would like to be in the top 5 cryptocurrencies by market cap. I think we probably will be in the top 15, I would hope, worst case. How do we get there? We get there by giving a best-in-class user experience, by giving best-in-class security, scalability, and resilience. So it's there when you want to use it. It doesn't get defrauded. It's not up and down all the time. And you don't need to have a supercomputer in an NSA basement to run a node. All the while, by keeping the community and the ecosystem engaged and convicted about what we're doing together, and also by making sure that it's an open platform that people can influence, by making it accessible with the linguistics that we choose to use, and by accepting PORs and development of the core software by the community. I would love to see, in 5 years' time, I want to see this thing being pushed forward by everyone, and not just the foundation or the Inc.
Well put. Let's go. Top 5, baby. Top 5. Let's get it. John,
Let's go.
I appreciate that. I really do. I mean, we've covered a lot of topics, and if I was bullish on Algorand before, I really don't know what I even am now. I think I have to develop a new word for it. And I do want to say, congratulations on how far you've come on the roadmap. I'm very optimistic. The AlgoFam is going to have an amazing time here as we inch closer to the bull run. And John, is there anything else you want to bring to the audience's attention before we close? Any closing thoughts?
No, I just want to say, between dynamic roundtimes, AlgoKit 2.0 with Python, non-archival relays, consensus incentivization, peer-to-peer, the future's never looked brighter. I don't know, what more we could do to push this thing forward. I think we're firing on all cylinders, and I can only hope that we're successful because we are trying hard. And so the community have been incredible getting behind this. I see the excitement out there. I see just the attitude has been amazing, just the general vibe in the community. So just keep it up, keep supporting, and just, get developing and get behind us, and we're all gonna make it. There
it is. John, I want to thank you so much I want to thank you so much for your time. I want to thank the audience for being here. Definitely everybody like and retweet the space if you have not already. Definitely go give a follow to John and the Algorand Foundation. Stay tuned for the next episode of Algorand Unfiltered. We do have more coming this month. I'm definitely looking forward to doing that. And this is it. Guys, it is up to Algorand. It is up to John to take the Algorand to the next level, but it's also up to us. And never forget that, because it's up to the community too. We have to do our job too, and we have been, but we need to keep doing it. And with that being said, my name is AJ Wrights Crypto. John, thank you so much for your time. Have a great rest of your day. Everyone be safe out there. I'll see you next Thursday.